Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today I was able to review the film of Steelers versus Bears in Week 12 of the NFL season from yesterday's game earlier this afternoon. And I have some takeaways for you guys. Offense, defense, and honestly, especially on the offensive side of the ball, some things surprised me for the Pittsburgh Steelers this week on film that I want to share with you guys. But before we get into the action today, make sure you guys click that subscribe button. It's 100% free to do so. And what you guys get when you click that subscribe button is you guys get not only our weekly film analysis that we put out here on Mondays, but also all of our Steelers content. Injury updates, we'll have more of those tomorrow on Tomlin Tuesday. Our live shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays, plus our Steelers Talk watch parties, which we have every single Steelers game day. So if you guys want to join the largest fan community of Steelers fans anywhere here on YouTube, make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And let's get into the takeaways here, starting with the offense, man. And, I pointed out, if you were watching our watch party yesterday, I thought in the first half, Arthur Smith was really in his bag. He did some really good things in the screen game. I thought that he was doing a really good job sequencing plays, all of that different stuff. And in the second half, obviously the results weren't as good, so I kind of assumed that Art got stale. But as I watched the film this week, guys, I actually thought that Arthur Smith called a really good game pretty consistently throughout all four quarters. And honestly, in the second half, it was more about lack of execution, specifically from the quarterback in the passing game. I think the numbers back this up. I think the run game was really good this week. I think they were good on third downs, for generally speaking. I thought they had some really good screen looks. I think Arthur Smith was doing a good job, scheming people open pretty consistently. The numbers speak for themselves. They were top 10 in the NFL this week in EPA per play, and they were top 2 in the league in success rate. The only team with a higher success rate on offense this week in the NFL was the Los Angeles Rams on Sunday Night Football, and they put belt to ass to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers there in L.A. last night. So honestly, I thought this was one of Art's best called games. He didn't have his starting quarterback out there yet. He was still able to set up his weapons up for success in ways that, frankly, we haven't really seen on the Steelers film for most of this season. I thought, the downfield passing concepts that he drew up for Mason were pretty darn good, and he created some great one-on-one opportunities for some guys. Got some guys open over the middle of the field at times. The run game was really well schemed up. The screen game was really well schemed up, and I really thought that the second half kind of was more on the execution side of things than on the coaching side of things. Certainly that points back to the quarterback, in my opinion, in Mason Rudolph, who I didn't think necessarily played a great game yesterday upon first watch, but after watching the film today, it was worse than expected. It really was, guys. Multiple missed reads, multiple missed opportunities to throw the ball down the field, and then when he did throw the ball down the field, it was a number of times. He took a number of shots specifically down the sideline. He missed a number of those, man. He really did, and he was literally inaccurate on all of the deep passes that he threw in this ball game. He threw one to the intermediate level of the field to Ben Skoranek that was completed for a decent gain, but outside of that, every time that he went beyond 10 air yards, it was an inaccurate throw. Many of the times underthrowing his receiver deep. And what is Mason Rudolph really known for? All I heard heading into this game was, he's gonna throw the ball down the field more often. He's a much better vertical thrower than Rodgers is. Well, that didn't show up in this ball game. Arthur Smith, I thought, did a good job scheming some of these guys open. He had guys open down the field, and he wasn't able to hit them. And also, I thought Mason's pocket presence was pretty darn bad. His mobility was even worse. He doesn't have quick feet like Rodgers does. And even though, Aaron Rodgers isn't very fast anymore, he can move his feet very quickly, and his agility is still at a very high level, whereas Mason Rudolph just has, cement bricks in his shoes, and he can't move at all. And, he's never been able to really sense pressure, took a lot of hits and sacks that he shouldn't have taken yesterday. And obviously that big fumble in the second half has a lot to do with him not being able to see Montez Sweat coming across the field there, beating Darnell Washington. Then the third thing there that I thought Mason really underwhelmed me with on film was that he had multiple chances to throw down the middle of the field of this game. Now, a lot of people have seen the heat map and, the throwing chart for Mason Rudolph, and there's pretty much no throws over the middle of the field. And, I even said in my Mike Tomlin video earlier today that it's kind of a philosophical thing for the Pittsburghs under Mike Tomlin. or for the Steelers under Mike Tomlin to not throw over the middle, and that has certainly been the case, especially over the last half decade or so. But Arthur Smith did have guys open over the middle of the field, specifically DK Metcalf on deep crossers multiple times, and Mason Rudolph just would not throw him the football. And, I was pulling my hair out today watching this film because I'm like, oh my gosh, Arthur Smith actually, got these guys open over the middle of the field today or yesterday, and Mason just A, wasn't looking at them, or B, just didn't pull the trigger, which is extremely disappointing. Unfortunately, I think if Aaron Rodgers plays in this game, I think the Steelers probably win versus the Chicago Bears. But then I did think the run game was on point all day long for the most part there. Pretty darn efficient. The EPA, and the success rate numbers were really good. I think they were number 1 in the league this week. And, when you look at this tandem of running backs, they didn't really give a lot of work to Caleb Johnson. And, with the way Kenneth Gainwell's played these last 2 games, I can kind of see why. Now, I do think that the average number and the total yardage for Gainwell is elevated by his 55-yard run on the fake tush push. So that's kind of, an outlier kind of play right there, in my opinion. But I thought Jaylen Warren was really efficient in this game as well. They were consistently moving the sticks. They were consistently getting the amount of yardage that they needed given the down and distance. So, this has become a legitimate running back tandem here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It might be the best thing about the Pittsburgh Steelers offense at this point, and they definitely need to do a better job getting them the football even more than they really did in this football game, because, you guys can take a look here since the Vikings game, and this is when the Steelers started implementing their jumbo personnel packages on early downs, okay? They're 4th in the league in rushing EPA, and they are 5th in rushing success rate. So this is one of the best rushing teams in terms of efficiency in the National Football League, but they're only 17th in rush percentage. Less than 43% of their offensive plays are run plays, and I think that has a little bit to do with Aaron Rodgers, because I think Rodgers likes to throw it, and he likes to be, the focal point of the offense, but, it's very clear that Jaylen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell, it's what's the best thing about this Pittsburgh Steelers offense, when they can go jumbo personnel, when they can get Ben Skoranek out there, and they can just move the line of scrimmage and get these guys some running lanes. That is the best thing that this Pittsburgh Steelers offense does, and that's frustrating because last year they weren't very good. They were 20th and 26th respectively in EPA average, and then success percentage and success rate, but they really committed to the run. They were top 5 in the league in rush percentage, with over half of their offensive plays being run plays. There's not a whole lot of teams that run the ball more than they pass it. The Steelers were one of those teams last year, and I was hoping that they could turn it around and turn around the run game this year. They've done that, but they haven't had the same commitment to the run game. So that's what I'm hoping for moving forward. I hope they prioritize the run game moving forward with Jaylen Warren and Kenny Gainwell. They did a better job of it this week, in my opinion, where they ran it almost just as much as they passed the football, even though they had to pass it quite a bit at the end of the game just to have a chance. So I think they did a better job of it this week. They got to continue that momentum, especially versus a Bills team this upcoming week at home that doesn't defend the run very well at all. But then another offensive takeaway that I have for you guys is that the right side of the offensive line, I think, is locked in for the future. All right. Of course, I'm talking about, the 3 very young players that were all drafted by this team last year in the NFL draft. Zach Frazier in the 2nd round, Mason McCormick in the middle rounds, and then you have Troy Fautanu, who of course was the 1st-round pick. All 3 of those guys have played phenomenally over these last few weeks, and that continued yesterday versus the Bears. They're moving the line of scrimmage in the run game. They're doing a great job protecting that side of the line in the pass protection game. Sayamalo's looked really good as well at left guard, but he's probably not a long-term option that's locked in for the future. And then Broderick, we'll kind of see with Broderick as the season goes on and as the rest of his rookie contract goes on. But in terms of the right side of this offensive line, guys, it's legit. And, there's a genuine ray of hope on the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line for the first time in a very long time, thanks to those 3 guys. So that's certainly a positive. But then my final film takeaway here on offense this week is that Calvin Austin III was back at wide receiver 2, and he was the best receiver on the Steelers, in my opinion, this past week, and he needs to continue in that role, and this offense needs to continue to find ways to get him the football. Not only did he lead the team in total yardage from a receiver, but also, he got all that yardage on the DPI that he that he got down the field to put them into field goal range there in the second half. But you guys can see the wide receiver snap share this week. Obviously, DK Metcalf is going to dominate that. He pretty much doubles everybody else. But Calvin was second among this group with 33. Ben Skoranek actually outsnapped Roman Wilson this week. That's notable. And then Scotty Miller got on the field for 5 plays when DK Metcalf was dealing with an injury. But what's interesting about the way that the Steelers use their wide receivers and their tight ends is that they actually use their tight ends more, all right? Like, you guys can see here, Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth got more snaps than any other Steelers wide receiver. And, of course, Darnell Washington got the second most snaps out of any Steelers weapon, period. So it's nice to see that the Steelers are prioritizing Darnell Washington. It's also nice to see that they are prioritizing getting Pat Freiermuth on the field more, because Muth is one of the better offensive weapons that the Steelers have. I mean, Mike Tomlin calls him a zone killer for good reason. He's highly intelligent. He's got really solid hands, very reliable targets. You know, the more that they can get him on the field, the better. But the bad news there is that Jonnu Smith is still out snapping every single Steelers wide receiver outside of DK Metcalf at this point. And Jonnu doesn't really do a whole lot. He catches screens. He takes a couple jet sweeps. He doesn't create any explosive plays. He doesn't block. He's not a good route runner. He never gets open versus man. He doesn't have particularly good hands. You guys know that it just completely baffles me that this team prioritizes Jonnu Smith as much as they do. And I think Calvin Austin III is a much more valuable asset to this Steelers offense than a guy like Jonnu Smith. Give Calvin more of those snaps. He got open really consistently yesterday. I thought Arthur Smith did a good job accentuating his strengths, which are his route running and his run-after ability. And I thought he had a pretty decent game yesterday. Now, Rowan Wilson being demoted to wide receiver 4 status, at least in terms of the snaps, might be concerning to some Roman stands out there. But I thought he played pretty decently, especially when he got opportunities to run some go routes. He stacked his cornerback twice, and Mason Rudolph threw him 2 deep balls, and both of them were inaccurate. And, you know, if Mason throws those accurately, you know, Roman might have 2 big touchdowns, and we might be talking about him as the bona fide wide receiver 2 of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I actually kind of liked what I saw on film this week from Calvin and Roman, the 2 kind of smaller receivers in this offense. I also really liked what I saw from Ben Skoranek in the run game, where they put him out there on early downs as a run blocker, and he was terrific. He caught a pass as well for a decent gain, and you know, I think there was a reason why he outsnapped Roman this week. You know, the Steelers kind of knew they had the size advantage versus the Chicago Bears, so they prioritized getting Skoranek out there. Well, with another team coming in to Pittsburgh this week, the Buffalo Bills, that really struggles against size and jumbo personnel packages, I think we're going to see more of Ben Skoranek in the Steelers offense this week. Now, you know, just my kind of big picture look at the Steelers offense moving forward. I'm looking forward to seeing what this offense looks like when Rodgers gets back into the fold, because I thought Arthur Smith called one of his better games of the season this past week. And if they run some of the nice downfield concepts that Arthur Smith kind of pulled out of his bag this week with Rodgers, I think there's a chance that this, you know, passing offense can get unlocked a little bit heading into this week versus the Buffalo Bills, and a defense that just frankly hasn't been very good this year. So they got the run game going. You know, the offensive line is playing pretty darn well. We're seeing some, good flashes from, DK Metcalf and Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson. Get those guys more involved. Get Jonnu Smith's ass out of here, man. You know, I still think that this offense has the potential to still be pretty darn good down the stretch. It's just about finding the right pieces to the puzzle and figuring it all out. Now, coming up next here on Steelers Talk, my defensive takeaways. I've got my thoughts on, kind of a lackluster performance from the Steelers defense yesterday coming up. But first, let me know who the best quarterback is on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster right now. Is it Aaron Rodgers, type AR? Is it Mason Rudolph, type MR? Do you think Will Howard is the best quarterback on the Steelers roster already? Type WH if you think Will is already the best QB on the team. This will be the pinned comment on today's show. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Prize Picks. While I tell you about Prize Picks, let me know who the best quarterback on the Steelers roster is. And now let's have a word from our sponsor today at Prize Picks. It is the holiday season, guys, and the best time, and it's definitely the best time of year for sports, at least in my opinion. You got basketball basketball that's heating up. You've got bowl games. You got playoff pushes in both collegiate and professional football. It's all happening all at once. It's absolutely fantastic. And while you and I are out here making decisions every single day, what gifts to buy, what to eat, what game to watch, there is one place where it feels good to be right, and that is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is super simple to play. Just pick more than or less than and at least 2-player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in. My favorite feature about Prize Picks is how you play is up to you. And if you want a little bit more flexibility, you can choose the flex play where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you really feel strongly about your lineup and want the bigger payouts, you can go for the power play. No matter how you play, though, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test and make some money. That is, if you know ball. And Ponzi and I made some money yesterday on Prize Picks for yesterday's game. We took the more on receiving yards for DJ Moore, the more on DK Metcalf receptions, and the more on Jaylen Warren rushing yards, and we were able to walk away with some money from our friends at Prize Picks. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup on the Prize Picks app today. It's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Now moving on to the defensive takeaways here, and I just thought there was a lot of head-scratching calls from defensive coordinator Teryl Austin in this ball game. I'll give you guys an example here where the Pittsburgh Steelers, on a 3rd down and 2 from the 2-yard line, they came out in this defensive alignment. Now you might notice there's only 2 down linemen at the goal line, all right? And it's only Keanu Benton, who has been driven backwards this entire season, and Cam Hayward, who's playing on a bum ankle. All right, so obviously Chicago just called duo, and they've kind of undercut TJ Watt, and they just duoed their ass into the end zone. It was the most obvious touchdown in the history of touchdowns in the National Football League, and this is all defensive coaching, guys. This is all Teryl Austin coordinating this defense, putting that personnel out there. Yeah, Chicago's going out there with 3 wide receivers. Big whoop. Why are we going out in nickel, and why are we only having 2 down linemen out there? It makes absolutely no sense, and, this wasn't the only time that they did this. They got out-schemed and out-coached by Ben Johnson all day long, and it was, frankly, an embarrassment for Teryl Austin, who's in charge of calling this defense and in charge of putting these guys in positions to succeed. And even Patrick Queen, what Mike Tomlin refers to as the quarterback of the defense, was calling out the coaches post-game, saying this about the recent struggles on defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think it was sometimes schematic issues that we had. It's kind of hard for 2 guys that are underneath to try and guard 2 routes that's overhanging the hashes and stuff. As much as you try and get a bang or whatever, it's hard to do that. It's just a hard spot to be in, and that's certainly something that I would I would describe the Steelers' defense. They put their players in hard positions to succeed consistently, and that is a very consistent issue with this defense. But, just schematically here, just talking about what the Steelers did this week and why it was different from the previous weeks, they went back to single high coverage. And, this is, even the quarter stuff that they were running this week wasn't working great, but it just wasn't a good week, man. And it wasn't a good week in terms of defensive schematics on the part of Teryl Austin, who got just absolutely pantsed by Ben Johnson this week. Nick Farabaugh put this out yesterday, saying a lot of single high looks to this week. 63% of their snaps came out in pre-snap single high shells, with 44.7% of those being cover 3. So it's a lot of cover 3. Obviously, Caleb Williams was ripping apart the Steelers' cover 3, whether it was a fire zone, whether it was a traditional cover 3, didn't matter. Ben Johnson and Caleb Johnson had the answers to the test. And, my question is, why mess with what was working before? You kind of came out with a too high safety structure, have that ambiguity, make these quarterbacks hang on to the football and mentally process your defense post-snap, give your, excellent pass rush time to get home. That didn't happen this week. They went out in single high, and, the pressure rate was super low. I think it was like at 16% or something like that for the Steelers this week, because Caleb Williams was getting the ball out fast. And the reason why Caleb was getting it out fast was because the predictability was back, all right? Obviously, Ben Johnson did a hell of a job doing his homework on the Steelers' defense and their tendencies, because, Caleb Williams was getting that ball out lightning fast. Even in the under center play action game, like Williams would do the play fake and then turn around and immediately throw it, because he just knew what the Steelers were going to be in. And Williams had an average time to throw of 2.68 this week and only a 15.8% pressure rate. That's just not good enough. And Williams, coming into the week, was dead last in average time to throw. Williams, heading into this week, guys, only had 1 week this entire year against a terrible defense, the Washington Commanders, where his average time to throw was below 3 seconds. And in this game versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, all right, he had a 2.68 average time to throw. That is, almost a full second lower than his season average. That is unacceptable for a quarterback that, frankly, has had some issues mentally processing defenses this year and holding on to the football for too long to be able to just get rid of that thing super quickly. Obviously, Ben Johnson did his homework on Terrell Austin, and he was able to find some weaknesses to exploit. And the truth is, Caleb just had the answers to the test. Ben Johnson gave him the cheat sheet, and, all Caleb had to do was go out there and execute it, and that's exactly what he did. And, obviously, with him getting the ball out quickly, as we've seen against Jordan Love and the Packers, as we've seen against Joe Burrow and the Bengals, or not Joe Burrow, Joe Flacco and the Bengals, when they've been getting the ball out fast this year, it prevents the Steelers' pass rush from getting home, all right? And we saw some good moments from the pass rush this week. Like T.J. Watt had a good moment. Nick Herbig was doing some good things as well, but it just wasn't good enough at the end of the day, guys. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles. But, a big part of the Bears' success was the under-center play-action game. And, you think back to a lot of these teams that have killed the Steelers' defense this year, Seattle, Green Bay, now Chicago. What do they all have in common? They get under center and they do heavy play action from under center and they attack down the field. And that's exactly what the Bears did in this ballgame. How many times did they go under center? Play fake, guy just runs a little, dig route over the middle of the field, and he's wide open. Like, it just happens way too much against this Steelers defense. It's a huge weakness, and, the Steelers defense plays their worst football against teams that go under center play action like the Chicago Bears do, and that showed up this week. And also the run defense has been inconsistent all season long. That certainly showed up in this game as well. Now, one of your best run defenders, Cam Hayward, was playing with a little bit of an injury. He was playing through that. But honestly, it's no excuse, obviously. And honestly, I think, linebacker play is a big reason why the run defense has been super inconsistent. And Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson, they're both athletic freaks, and they both run really fast. They can go sideline to sideline. They can do all that stuff physically. But, I don't think they're the smartest linebackers in the world. And that's what makes a great linebacker, is being able to identify tendencies, anticipate things, and be able to, play anticipatory football instead of reactionary football. Because, these quarterbacks in the NFL, man, they're really, really good. And these play callers are really good at manipulating linebackers. So for a linebacker to be an impact player, they have to kind of know what the tendencies are of their opponent and act on those. And Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson just don't do those things, man. There's multiple times where they just got played like a fiddle. They're out of position in the run game, leading to some nice runs for Kyle Monungai in particular in this game. And, in pass coverage, sometimes they get manipulated like crazy as well. So I think Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson, certainly make splash plays. They're athletic freaks. They're decent players, but in terms of being impact players, I'm not sure if either of them are there yet. Then Kyle Duggar, I thought, had his worst day as a Pittsburgh Steeler. Now, I think that the system that they played this week with a lot more single high coverage didn't necessarily fit his play style and what he has done so well with the Pittsburgh Steelers through his first few weeks here in the Steel City. You can just tell he's so much more comfortable in that quarters alignment, that too high safety structure. And you could just tell he was out of place as a middle of the field safety. You could tell that he was out of place as, the true, even strong safety, which is what he's usually played in his career. So I think it's very clear, if you're Terrell Austin, if you're Mike Tomlin, you have to go back to that too high pre-snap structure that this team has really had so much success with since they acquired Duggar. They tried something different this week, and it ended up biting them in the ass. Then I thought it was a big step back for James Pierre on the outside. He had the lowest PFF grade out of any corner that the Steelers had, outside of Darius Slay, all the starting corners this week. Now, PFF grading isn't gospel, but, he gave up quite a few receptions on the film as well in man coverage. So, I still like James, but, if at this point they wanted to go and bring up Asante Samuel Jr., I wouldn't necessarily scoff at that. If Asante's showing some good things in practice, I guess we'll have to see. But they did start Pierre full-time over Darius Slay in this ballgame, and unfortunately Pierre didn't play his best game, although he probably played better than Darius Slay would have. Then I thought that the Steelers defense saved their best for last. They showed up at the end there. And they got 2 stops, 2 3-and-outs to give the Steelers not 1 but 2 chances to win the game late. And unfortunately, Mason Rudolph, when the team needed Rudy to put the team on his back and go get them a win, he wasn't able to do it. And the reality of the situation is, guys, it wasn't all bad on the Steelers defensive film yesterday. There was some good stuff on there, especially T.J. Watt, with his strip sack fumble that he got on Caleb Williams that ended up in a touchdown. That was phenomenal. There's some good individual moments from different players on this defense, but generally speaking, man, there's no doubt about it. Tara Lawson got absolutely pantsed by one of the best offensive play callers in football in Ben Johnson, and he just got his lunch money taken. And, sometimes that happens. It happens to the best coaches in the league where they get out-coached at times. But like with the Tara Lawson, it feels like it's getting a little bit too frequent, where you're going up against Matt LaFleur and you're going up against Clint Kubiak and you're going up against Ben Johnson, and they just have all the answers to the test. So, frankly, guys, Tara Lawson has not done a good enough job this year. I thought that he and Tomlin did a good job turning around this defense over the last month, but it was definitely a step backwards this week against a good Bears defense. But I will say, guys, I'm not overly worried just yet. Now, if they put together 2 or 3 more really bad defensive performances together, yes, I mean, the season's over with this defense. It's just not going to, they're just never going to figure it out. But, I do think we have to give Ben Johnson some props. This is, in my opinion, a top 5 offensive play caller in all of football. He's taken a quarterback in Caleb Williams that has pretty significant accuracy issues, and really a running back room that not a lot of people believed him heading into the year, and he has cultivated a top 10 offense in year 1 there in Chicago. I mean, in almost every single category that you look at, they're top 10. So I don't want Steelers fans to necessarily, hang their heads too low, because this is a top 10 offense you just went up against and one of the truly elite offensive play callers. But there's also the reality that, if you're going to win a Super Bowl, you're going to have to beat play callers like this, and you're still going to have to play good football against guys like this. And unfortunately, the Steelers weren't able to do that on Sunday, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. And hopefully, Tara Lawson and Mike Tomlin, took this medicine, learned their lesson, and get better as the season goes on. But I guess we'll just have to see. So let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. What is your concern level for the Steelers defense right now? Over the last 4 games, over the last month, they've had 3 pretty darn good performances and 1 not-so-great performance last week against Chicago. But put on a scale of 1, meaning not worried at all, I'm cool, to 10, meaning 5-alarm fire, absolutely panicking, all this different stuff. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. I know today was a little bit of a longer one, as our film analysis videos tend to be, but make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. And I'll also implore you guys to go check out my Twitter at Jack_Sperry. If you guys want specific examples, I actually put up my film analysis up on my X account because I can't put it up here on YouTube. So if you guys want to see specific examples of everything that I talked about in today's video, you can follow me on X at Jack_Sperry and check out all the clips that I posted on there earlier today. But that'll be it for today's show, guys. I greatly appreciate all of your guys' support. Tomorrow is Steelers Talk Live Day. Can't wait to talk some Steelers football with you guys. Until then, guys, here we go, Steelers.